Okay, so today we're going to talk about my script that I wrote for Marvel's The Sentry. Now, for those of you that don't know who The Sentry is, The Sentry is a superhero by Marvel in the comics that is basically Marvel's interpretation of Superman. Now, there's a few things a bit different about it, and my movie would be like the MCU's interpretation of Sentry. And I'm going to read what I wrote. So, this is all going to be original, and I'm sorry I'm late on this. I forgot to record it last night, and this is like the actual movie, and it will be about Robert Reynolds, the Sentry. So, here we go. So Robert Reynolds is an average, ordinary man who works at a day job in the office. He has a wife and 2 kids. Everything appears normal, and he's just having a normal night, when all of a sudden he walks into an alleyway and encounters a criminal. Now, this criminal is just an average criminal who tries to rob him of his possessions and robs him for money. Robert doesn't want to do this, but he goes with it and gives him his wallet, and everything appears like a normal mugging thing. When all of a sudden, on instinct, Robert just starts beating the shit out of the guy and starts fighting him. And eventually, the fight ends with him shooting an energy blast out of his hand. Now, Robert is shocked by this because he did this all on instinct and didn't know where it came from and was pretty freaked out about it. Now, on his way home, driving home after freaking out about what just happened, he gets this vision in his head. And this vision is of a man in a yellow suit with a blue cape and and a superhero outfit, like a basic superhero outfit. And the man has blonde hair and is saving people with a smile on his face. Robert doesn't know who this man is or what his connection is to him. So Robert just acts as if it's normal and goes back on with his life. But he can't really do that because of his powers that he discovered. So Robert starts to use these powers to his advantage and starts to be a vigilante. He starts going out and using his powers to save people. And it's been going well for at least 2 weeks. There was even this guy who used like atomic weapons and stuff to rob a bank, and Robert saved everyone safely. And the guy tried to kill Robert after saving all the hostages in the bank, but he kept shooting him with special guns, and Robert shot an energy blast back at him. That didn't kill him, but incapacitated him. Same with the criminal from before. The guy asked Robert, "Who are you? You are so powerful, you are basically a sentry." Robert takes this into consideration, what the criminal called him, and calls himself the Sentry. Meanwhile, at home, his wife is having to cope with Robert and figures out what happened. He figures out that Robert has been doing all this stuff at night and is kind of freaking out about it and doesn't want her husband to go into hell, basically. And Robert basically says he has to keep doing this or else people will die. The Avengers can't save everything in the world. So Robert basically keeps doing what he's doing, but his wife and kids leave him. Like, his wife takes full custody of the kids, and Robert goes back to his vigilanteing, even though after what just happened, losing the kids. And Robert is devastated by this, and he starts inflicting his pain on the criminals that he fights. When eventually, a man named Nick Fury comes out of nowhere. This man is unknown to Robert, but he is African American and has an eye patch. He's basically the guy in the Avengers movie, Samuel L. Jackson. And Samuel L. Jackson, since he works with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, he basically is fascinated with Robert's abilities. And since he's like a part of the government, he's been kind of monitoring Robert for quite a long time, and starts to believe that he should recruit him, maybe to the Avengers. Robert obviously wants to do this, but Nick Fury says, so right now, I don't want you in the Avengers because you're just discovering these powers, and I don't want you to go into like world-threatening events that the Avengers face and possibly screw up. And so Robert agrees and goes back to the government with him, S.H.I.E.L.D. And the two of them start to get along, and Robert starts to train at S.H.I.E.L.D., figuring out more and more of his powers. He figures out that he has so much strength, and that he has strength capable of lifting almost 1 quillion tons. And Nick Fury is fascinated by this because he says that the Hulk's strongest feat in the world has been lifting a mountain, and Robert exceeded that with that lift. And because of this, Robert decides and starts and asks Nick Fury if he can go on missions with him. Nick Fury agrees, and they start to go on missions together, saving people and being superhero, and Robert being a superhero. Now, after all this has been going on, Robert starts to slowly get more and more memories of him saving people. Of this person saving people in the yellow costume and the blue cape. He doesn't know who this is still, but he just keeps going at it and putting the memories together, trying to figure out what they mean. Eventually, Robert figures out that the man in his memories was him. Robert figures this out by testing out one of his powers one day, which are mind manipulation. He can basically read people's minds, erase their thoughts, tell them what they want to think, and basically have power over the mind. Now, Robert also had another memory after figuring this out of the Yellow Man erasing everyone on Earth's memory of him, and including the Yellow Man himself, landing on Earth and just having no memory of who he is and what's going on. Now, this seems really strange to Robert because Robert remembers the exact same thing. Just walking out in the open, not knowing who he is or what's going on. Robert had the same memory of this, except he didn't erase his own mind. And Robert, as I said before, figures out that he was the man in the yellow and tries to figure out more information on why he wiped his memories. So he gets Nick Fury and asks for his help and asks if he'd seen a man that he described in his memories before. Now, Nick Fury goes into his computer catalogs by the government and figures out that there was somebody who did this. And that person also went by the name the Sentry, like Robert chose his superhero name to be. And the Sentry was basically a superhero that went around saving people with super strength and flight. And Robert can also do this. I'm sorry I forgot that part. But they also find this one video footage by the government that was hidden of the Sentry going crazy while he was saving somebody, claiming that he was somebody called the Void. Now, the footage all started with the Sentry just saving people like normal, when all of a sudden, after saving the people and saying, "Thank you, citizens," he just starts grabbing his head and going crazy, as if something is going on in his mind. And eventually, what I just said, something comes out. The Sentry stops doing that with glowing purple eyes when he looks up, saying, "The Sentry is no longer here. There is only the void." And the Sentry destroyed a building that was on fire that he saved everyone from. He basically destroyed it in one punch. And he was about to kill the citizens when Robert took control of his mind again. And after this happened, he was freaked out and flew away. And that was the video footage. Now, Robert gets another memory flash after this, and that memory flash is him flying away and him being afraid at his house. And he's afraid that if the Void does this once again or any longer... Oh, and by the way, the Void has been doing this for a couple of weeks besides that video footage. If the Void did that any longer, he probably would have killed somebody by now. So what Robert does is he flies up in the air and erases his memory and the entire world that the Sentry even existed, and, well, as I said, including his own, so that the Void can't attack anymore. Possibly erasing the Void's memories inside of Robert, that the Void even existed, so that the world can live in peace. And eventually the Avengers showed up, and yeah, you know. Eventually, Robert discovered this and tells Nick Fury that he needs to lock Robert up, because Robert figured everything out. And that means the Void figured out everything, which means the Void can continue killing people and going on a rampage. So Robert is about to get locked up in a facility where supervillains get locked up, when it's too late and the Void takes over and destroys where Nick Fury is. Robert is stuck inside of his own mind and can't do anything, and the Void is going on a rampage, destroying the city. Now, Robert doesn't know what he's going to do, because obviously the Void is taking over, and because of this, the Void is now powerful enough to possess Robert's body, now that Robert has been using his powers for quite a long time. Oh, and by the way, the thing that fuels the Void for giving him power is Robert using his powers himself. So, Robert tries to figure out what's going on, when eventually he finds a path inside his mind that's leading him somewhere. Robert goes down this path and finds out it's all of his memories. Not when he figured out all the flashbacks and stuff that he's seen, he just got pieces, and he got enough to figure out what the Void was planning, but he didn't get every single one of his memories back. But this was his memories, like an embodiment of his memories. And he was wearing the Sentry costume with the yellow outfit, and he says to Robert, what you did was unforgivable. I gave you these powers for a reason. And I'm not going to tell you that. That's for a sequel if it's ever going to happen. But he tells Robert, what you did was unforgivable. You can't just erase your memory and use your gift to do this, because the world still needs you, regardless of what you did. You just saved a little event from happening. Nothing more. You could have helped the Avengers, and you could have saved a lot of people from other events. Now, Robert understands this and says that he's sorry for what he's done. And the Sentry says, if I help you with what you're doing right now, will you continue to save people and be the superhero you were meant to be with these powers? And Robert agrees Robert agrees, and his memories take him to his mind, where the void is. And Robert starts to fight the void inside of his mind, while the real void, who's taking over his body, is destroying everything in the real world, causing chaos in the city. Oh, and I was thinking maybe while in the fight scenes, when he's destroying the city, he could be fighting the Avengers. I'm not quite sure what I should do, but I think it's pretty cool, the fight scenes that are happening. But, anyways, Robert tries to defeat the void and stop him from taking over his mind, and he eventually beats him so badly that he kicks the void out of Robert's mind. And Robert takes control of his body again. Now, Robert thinks everything is done well and the fight is over. But eventually, out of nowhere, a bunch of plasma, purple dark energy shows up and forms a body. And this body is the void. And the void apparently, while he was in Robert's body, has become so powerful because of all the chaos that went on, and because of Robert's using his powers, fueling the void, that he's able to sustain his own body without Robert. And Robert figures this out and tries to stop him. But because the void is so powerful in this form, Robert can't win. So what he does is Robert figures out that the only way to beat him is do what Robert did before, except Robert wouldn't erase his own memories. So what he did was he erased the void's mind, and the void doesn't know who he is. And because of this, Robert tries to convince the void to be a normal citizen and to live a happy life. But the void was tricking Robert and does actually have memories of this and was toying with him. So, because of this, the void, because he's evil, kills a citizen. And the citizen was actually a child, and Robert was afraid of this because that child was one of his 2 children. And Robert got so mad at this that he punched the void so hard, like he had enough power, and punched the void so hard that it would obliterate him completely. But because of this, Robert was so he was in that fight for so long, using so much of his power, that Robert had been knocked out by all the energy he had used and all the pressure he'd used on his body. After the battle, Robert was in the hospital for recovery, and his wife had shown up and said she was sorry for leaving him. Robert forgave his wife, and said that he was sorry for not trying to save her. She forgave him and said that you probably couldn't have because of the fight and you were so weak. But I know you can get stronger in the future. And Robert nodded and said yes. She eventually left the room with her 1 child. And Nick Fury comes in and says that what you did was amazing, but it was kind of reckless. You're going to need some further training. And Sentry says, Robert says that I know, but I'm going to work on my own right now. The government can do whatever they want to me, but they can't beat me. Nick Fury knows this because Nick Fury knows that all the Avengers are probably out of their class against Sentry. And Nick Fury says, just promise me in the near future that if we need you, you'll come. Sentry agrees on this. I mean, Robert agrees on this. And the final cut of the movie will be Robert in the actual comic accurate Sentry outfit flying into the sky and saying, I made a promise. And that promise was to protect the people that I didn't protect before. I will be an Avenger eventually. But until then, I need to help the people that the Avengers don't save. I am the Sentry. And the movie ends. Okay, so if you guys liked my script that I wrote, please tell me. I'll also release it to the public so that they can see it. It's a really good story that I wrote, and it's easy for people to follow. It's a great introduction to the character Sentry from the comics. If you don't know who Sentry is, look him up. He's kind of a boring character, and this story kind of made him cool. I don't know if I'm going to do any Avengers scripts, like Avengers with Sentry. Even though it would be cool to make a movie where the Sentry teams up with Marvel superheroes. But I just want to say the Batman is coming out sometime in March. The Screen Patrol is coming out in April, so look forward to those. I'm sorry this is late once again. And if you guys have any suggestions or comments, please write them below. And I will see you all next time. Goodbye!